Right. I like the way you describe, the history there from altcoins to ICOs to DeFi's. And now we have the centralized bank digital currencies, the CBDCs, which would kind of represent the fiat money scam coin singularity, which is operating in parallel to the Bitcoin singularity. Bitcoin singularity would be when Bitcoin becomes hyper-Bitcoinization, like we see in El Zonte in El Salvador. It's essentially the economy is a Bitcoin economy, a circular economy. In the fiat money world, they're heading into the fiat money singularity, which is where you have a central bank digital currency, and it's a singular sensation, a circular economy of a spiraling down into the ultimate collapse of centralization, central banks, centralized governments. And this is all happening at the same time. I think this is why people don't understand that you can't be in both camps at the same time. You have to be in either part of the fiat money apocalypse or part of the Bitcoin revelation. Those are the two that you have that choice to make. Speaking of movie references, this reminds me of the Cheech and Chong movies where I think Cheech, or maybe it was Chong, says, hey, this is really good shit. And the other guy says, really, what is it? And he says, it's actual shit. So this is a CBDC, a central bank digital currency. They're smoking their own feces, in other words. That's what the point of it is. And they're saying that this is what's getting them closer to understanding how the economy works and to be able to ferret out if there's in fact a crisis on the horizon. The CBDC is the crisis. Of course, the situation is going absolutely inflationarily out of control. And in that case, this is very popular for the poop shelf in Germany. If you go to Germany, you'll see this in the toilets quite often. So to put this in terms of perhaps what Germans could understand now that they're in the crisis, and that would be a fecal transplant. So if you take Bitcoin and you think of it as a fecal transplant and you insert it into the German economy, it would drive out the parasites that are the euro. That is Christine Lagarde. Remember, Christine Lagarde is a parasite, much more parasitical even than Jamie Dimon. And Jamie Dimon is the tapeworm's tapeworm. He got voted tapeworm of the year last year. Right, well, you talk about this winter and the growing problems. I mean, looking ahead to Christmas, I would expect that people will replace their elf on a shelf with maybe Mr. Hanky on a shelf. That'll be the Christmas present most popular this year. As we see this transition from any semblance to a sound economy to one that's driven entirely by central bank fecal matter.
Well, in fact, it used to be considered, back in the old days, it used to be considered an insult to give somebody a lump of coal for Christmas. Actually, this year, that's going to be a prized possession. Right. People are going to be like, thank you, Santa. This is like the most amazing gift ever.
Yeah, the North Pole is flooded with letters to Santa, please send coal. Well, from Germans, please Santa, we need more coal. Well, that's all very fascinating. It is. Can't wait for Christmas. As part of being unbanked, the use of Tether, US dollar, and other fiat surrogates is a great way to stay unbanked. And that is to say, you don't need the formal banking system to do everything that you can do in the legacy banking system. I wanted to ask you about the second largest stablecoin, USDC. It's got a market cap nearly as large as that of Tether, and yet the daily transaction volume of that stablecoin is a very tiny fraction of Tether's volume. Tether does 10 times as much volume. How is that possible unless USDC is something completely different? Right, so central bank digital currencies collectively, and including one of your competitors, USDC, are collectively referred to as surveillance coins. What does that mean, and how is Tether different?
So Tether is a centralized stablecoin, right? So Tether works, is registered with FinCEN, works with law enforcement and with regulators around the world. So we have, of course, to comply with our duties. Being a centralized stablecoin means that we are relying on the banking system to receive wires when people want to issue Tethers, and also process outgoing wires when people want to redeem Tethers. So it's important that we comply with the regulation and rules of the banking industry. At the same time, it's important to properly understand how your stable coin is being used, right? So we want our stable coin to be used by peers, by people in Nigeria, in Congo, in Vietnam, in India, right? So again, in Latin America, it is spreading really fast. So we believe that is important to see a stable coin, although centralized, being used in a free form like cash.
Now, let's move on. So Bitfinex recently donated 36 Bitcoin and $600,000 worth of Tether to El Salvador. Stacy and I have been distributing it here in El Salvador on your behalf. What are your thoughts so far on the distribution?
Well, first of all, I really want to thank Stacy and yourself, Max, because when you enter in this type of initiatives, is really important and critical to make sure that the money is properly spent in a way that is beneficial to the ecosystem, the local ecosystem, right?
Right, no intermediaries. Stacy and I went into the neighborhoods, typically gang-ridden neighborhoods, and we went P2P, peer-to-peer, and we transferred Bitcoin directly from you guys through us into the wallets of locals here in El Salvador. And it's a beautiful moment of activism enabled by the good guys with Bitcoin. Now, the Bitfinex platform will host El Salvador's volcano bond. When is that going to be issued? It will mean that the new securities law here in El Salvador will have already passed. President Bukele says he believes that El Salvador can be the Singapore of Latin America. Do you agree that they can lead the way into a hyper-Bitcoinized world?
Well, I definitely do agree that El Salvador has a big chance of becoming the most prosperous country in Latin America, right? So I think that Mr. Bukele, the president, had this vision before anyone else. So that's the things that excite me most, right? This is, again, something that was never attempted and has the chance to become really real in the next few months. So from what I hear, the government is getting back ready to execute on the law and the licensing part and the key information documents that are the final stages of preparation of the Volcano token.
Paulo Andorna, thanks so much for being on Max and Stacy Report.
Thank you, Stacy and Max.
Okay, and that's going to do it for this edition of Max and Stacy Report, coming to you from El Salvador, land of the free, home of the Bitcoin.